Well, hey everybody, I'm Mitch, old guy in a drone, and today I want to talk some about the DJI goggles. I think these goggles are revolutionizing our hobby, the FPV flying hobby that is, and I know at least for me, the experience I've had with these things has been terrific. The quality of the transmission feed to the goggles, the clarity, the immersiveness is something that unless you've experienced it, it's hard to describe to somebody that's basically had all their experience flying with analog goggles. Now, I think DJI did a great job on this entire system. The air units are small, the goggles are good, they're easy to operate, very reliable, range is good, and all in all, I'm tremendously pleased by them. And right now I have 3 drones with the air units installed and a bunch of other drones that have analog outputs. I also have some FPV airplanes and wings that have analog outputs, so I'm forced to use analog goggles for those instances and have to generally carry the 2 different pairs of goggles with me. The analog goggles don't have near the image quality and clarity that the DJI ones do, and I wish that DJI had simply put an analog receiver in this thing when they released it to market. Now, I know they have the technology to do that because their DJI Goggles RE or Racing Edition, the dark gray ones, designed to hook up to their old digital air units via OcuSync, did have an analog receiver in them. I don't know why they left them out of this unit. Maybe it was a marketing thing. Maybe they're looking for DJI FPV system version 2 to add that in, to get everybody who's bought the first one to buy another one. Whatever their reason, a lot of the community has actually come up with ways to backdoor the installation of or use of analog in these goggles. Now, these goggles do have an AV input right over near the power jack, and one of the ways that you can use this is to have what they call a ground station, which is basically just a video receiver that connects to the goggles by a wire with a standard composite video signal. And this works great. And sometimes there's actually advantages to this because you can put the thing on a tripod, raise it up real high, put some really high gain antennas on it, and point it in the direction you're flying. Your reception won't be hindered by you moving your head around or looking down and actually pointing the antennas that are on your goggles away from something else. But it's more equipment to carry with you, and you are tethered to the thing by the cable connecting the receiver. Another solution comes from iFlight. It's relatively inexpensive, $20.96 on Banggood. And what it is a replacement faceplate for the goggles that basically has built into it a module bay for a Fat Shark style receiver module. And they sell it as a kit. The kit comes with a BEC, which is designed to convert the battery voltage down to 5 volts, a couple of longer screws, and a couple pieces of wire. It's a 3D printed faceplate. It's what it looks like when it's on the goggles. The only problem with this, you have to completely take apart your goggles to install the thing, which voids your warranty. Now, there's been a number of videos made about that, and the thing for me is you're tearing the entire set of goggles down to run basically 2 small wires, which just mimic the jacks that are already on the outside of the goggles. And the third solution that I found one day searching Thingiverse for anything DJI goggles related was this, which looks exactly like the 3D printed iFlight faceplate module. The only difference being there's 2 holes on the side to run those 2 wires outside and just putting plugs on them and plugging them into the goggles externally, negating the need to completely tear down the goggles, void the warranty. And to me, that looked like a great solution. So I thought that I would share a little bit about my experience about how I went ahead doing this, and I did some things a little differently, and what you would need if you wanted to do these things to your DJI goggles. So here goes. Well, the first thing we need to do for this little project is to download the STL files from Thingiverse, and my thanks to Crazy Guy FPV, who shared this fairly intricate 3D print with us. And again, in our community, you don't have to share these things. You could sell them, but it's one of the nice things about the drone community is good-hearted people that share this stuff. Again, Crazy Guy FPV, thanks so much for sharing this with us. And after you download the files, you might want to also get the graphic for the wiring diagram, which you may or may not use depending on what your power source is going to be and what type of module that you have selected. Of course, the first thing you're going to do is 3D print the new faceplate. And I printed one in red at first and then decided I didn't like red. So I printed another one in black PLA. And I have an Ender 3 printer, and I printed it with supports. And you had to tear off a lot of supports, but it came out pretty good. Then you take your goggles and simply remove this faceplate by these two small screws. I think it's a 1.5 millimeter driver. So once you've got your goggles open, they're going to look like this. Now you take whatever module you're going to use and you install it and set it into this bay here, just like you would in your Fat Shark goggles. And instead of the pins plugging into the receptacle in the goggles, the pins will go through this slot in here through to the other side. You can see that they'll be sticking up here. And then once the pins are in there, we have a choice of either making a connector to slide down on them, or if you're brave, you might just want to tack solder the wires to the connector. So here's my faceplate with the TBS Fusion module and the cover installed. And if you look down on the back side here, you can see that the pins are coming through the back of the connector. Now, the way these things are wired is the pin on the bottom in this case is your voltage in right here. This is the voltage in. This is not connected. The third pin up is ground. The fourth pin up and fifth pin up are not connected. And the sixth pin up is your video in. So you've got voltage in, nothing, ground, nothing, nothing, and video in. Now, what I did was I took and made a connector and crimped the pins on this connector, and I bought a kit that has all these different connectors, which is a handy thing to have. But if you don't have that, you could actually solder onto these pins. I wanted a removable connector because I wanted the option of changing out modules or not damaging the connector in case someday I did want to use it in a pair of goggles and I didn't want solder all over the pins. But what I've done here, if you see this connector, is the wire that comes in and is soldered to the plug that goes into the AV input is a 2-conductor shielded wire. It has a ground and a center conductor. And I took the center conductor and it goes into what is pin 6 from the bottom. And then I connected the ground of this to the ground as well that goes to the battery, and put that into the third pin from the bottom. And then the plus voltage line that comes in on the power cord goes to the bottom. So then once you've got these three things connected, all you need to do is set them in there and push them in. And make sure that you've caught the first one. Now I had to make that connector fit in there, I had to take this little flat file here and go in there and file the 3D print down a little bit, but it's not a big deal, and I was able to make it fit. Okay, once you've got the module installed and wired up, and you've got the two wires coming out the side that you need, one for the power, one for the video signal that goes into the goggles, you just put the faceplate back on like this, and two screws. And you may have to press a little to get it to line up, but it does screw in. You don't want to over tighten it. But once you've done that, the mod is now installed on the goggles. And over here on the side, the wire for the video signal goes. I usually run it down behind the power connector, and it goes right in here like that, and that's all there is to it. Now, I elected to use an onboard supply, and the perfect one, I think, for these goggles is this Furious FPV battery pack made for the Fat Shark. Now, it is a battery case that holds two 18650 lithium ions, and it's got a 2S output, or just under 8 volts nominal, and it has a balance connector on it right here. And the nice thing about that is, from the outside two edges of the balance connector, you can get the 8 volts. Now, coincidentally, this TBS Fusion module will work up to 2S, up to 8 volts. So I was able to plug it directly into the balance lead, and to do that on the end of the power wire that I've got coming out of this thing, I just soldered a JST connector to match the balance connector. So the nice part about that is, if I'm flying with digital, then all I need to do is just turn on the the Furious FPV module, and I can power up the goggles. And now the goggles are powered up. If I'm flying analog, then I can plug in the power for the TBS Fusion module and set the goggles to AV in, and I'm in business. If I'm not using this, like some of the other mods that remain powered on all the time, I just simply don't plug the power into that, and then I've got the standard DJI goggles. Now, if your goggles are being powered by a 3 to 4S and from a battery that's not connected, then you have to wire off the power for the module somehow and wire it to the battery eliminator, the BEC. And what I would do, looking at the inside of the module, is I would take the BEC and stick it inside, maybe over on this side, where it doesn't bump into anything, and then run the wires over here. Come in with the power to the end of the BEC, out of the BEC to the appropriate pins on the module. But depending on what kind of power system you're using and what kind of module you're using, there may be slight differences in the wiring. Now, the last thing that I did want to mention was the wiring of the plug that goes into the AV input. All right, this is called a TRRS plug, and it's a 3.5 millimeter TRRS plug, and T means tip, ring, and shield. And the way this is wired is the tip and the first ring are not used, although they could be used for audio if you want, because that is if your module has an audio out, it could be wired here. The bottom ring is the video in to the goggles. So you have video, which is the center of the coax, and the shield in this case is ground. So the wiring of this cable, video in this case, that comes out of the unit and loops back around and plugs in to the AV end of the goggles, is the shield is ground, and the bottommost ring closest to the base of the plug is the video signal from the module. And that's all there is to it. So what we have here is the finished deal with the 2 modules on it and built-in power, and that means that I can fly with this thing without having wires hanging down anywhere. And it's not too heavy. I find it pretty comfortable. I wouldn't want to wear it all morning, but I really like it. So this really worked out great for me. And now that it's done, let's go fly it a little bit.